My name was Amir. I was a cleric in a small village in Sumatra, a man revered and honored, a bastion of faith in a community that demanded absolute obedience. I wore my title like a cloak, proud of my knowledge of the Quran and the traditions that bound us. Yet, deep within, I felt a void, a chilling emptiness that my prayers could not touch. As I stood before my congregation, I projected strength, but beneath the surface, doubts whispered. In the stillness of the night, as I sought answers, I was met not by comforting words, but by a haunting presence. Visions of a smiling figure, a Christian, who seemed to beckon me toward a truth I could not understand. What if everything I believed was a mere shadow of a more profound reality? Then came the night when my world shattered. I fell into darkness, an accident that left my body behind. In those fleeting moments of death, I encountered the light of Jesus, a radiant force that shattered my fears and revealed the spiritual war surrounding us. He called me by name, revealing the chains of deception that held me captive, a manipulation of faith that hid the true essence of love and freedom. Waking from that coma, I was no longer the respected cleric. I was branded a heretic, a pariah in my own home. The weight of my revelations threatened to crush me, yet my heart yearned for liberation, for a truth that had eluded me. I understood then. The journey was not just about me, but a calling to share what I had learned about a more profound, unyielding spirit waiting to break through the barriers of fear. So, as I step into this narrative, I invite you to join me. This story is not simply about my transformation. It's a beacon for those lost in the shadows of dogma. Before we delve deeper, I want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? And what time is it in your corner of the world? And if you sense the stirring of something greater within you, subscribe now to Truth from Beyond. Together, let's uncover the hidden truths that illuminate the path ahead. In a rural village in Sumatra, Indonesia, I lived my life as a Muslim cleric, steeped in the traditions that governed our community. My name is Amir, and each day was dictated by the rhythms of prayer and strict adherence to Islamic practices. The environment around me emphasized obedience, familial honor, and conformity, where questioning the norms was met with suspicion. As I led my congregation, I wore the masks of faith and authority, yet beneath the surface, a sense of emptiness began to carve away at my spirit. It was as if I was navigating a labyrinth, each turn reinforcing the fear that kept us bound to tradition, with little room for personal truth or expression. One evening, while returning from a local gathering, an accident turned my world upside down. A sudden, violent clash with another vehicle sent my mind spiraling into darkness. In that moment of chaos, as my consciousness faded, I felt myself slipping away. It was then that I found myself in a realm of pure silence, a vast expanse where time held no meaning. As I floated in that void, a brilliant light pierced through, illuminating the space. From that radiant glow emerged Jesus, a figure of boundless love and compassion. His very presence filled me with a warmth I had never known before, and in that instant, everything about my previous life faded away. Jesus spoke directly to my heart, revealing truths that shattered the illusions I had lived under for so long. He showed me the hidden agendas of the elite, how they manipulated our beliefs to control the masses and keep us divided. As I witnessed visions of our world, I saw families torn apart by rigid adherence to dogma, communities fractured by fear, and individuals trapped in cycles of deception. My heart raced as he imparted the urgency of this spiritual war we were all engaged in, one that demanded awakening and clarity. The weight of expectation from my community felt trivial compared to the revelations being laid bare before me. When I regained consciousness, the stark contrast between my experience and the reality of my life felt jarring. The cold hospital room was suffocating, echoing with reminders of the battle I was now aware existed. I realized that my time spent as a cleric had been a facade, a performance serving the structure of manipulation rather than a true exploration of faith. As I gathered my thoughts, the burden of tradition pressed heavily on my heart. I was torn between the fear of losing everything, my standing in the community, the love of my family, and the undeniable truth that now coursed through my veins. Determined to embrace my awakening, I felt compelled to share my experience, even as doubt and anxiety coursed through me. I knew the risk of speaking out against the very doctrines I had spent a lifetime upholding, yet the thought of remaining silent felt like a betrayal to the truth I had encountered. I began to seek out others who might feel similarly trapped, hoping to create a community of understanding and support. Together, we could confront the deceptions that had long held us captive, and spread the message of liberation I had received from Jesus. In this, I found a new purpose, a mission that would guide my every step moving forward. As I prepared to navigate the uncertain waters of faith and truth in a world rife with division and confusion, I was a 35-year-old Muslim cleric in Indonesia, deeply respected within my community for my extensive knowledge of the Quran. On the surface, I maintained a serene appearance, embodying the discipline and devotion associated with my role, but inside, I grappled with an overwhelming sense of emptiness. Each day in the mosque, as I recited the sacred texts, I felt a growing dissatisfaction whispering to me, a voice I struggled to silence. The rigid obedience to religious norms that had been drilled into me felt more like chains than a path to enlightenment. The expectations of family and community weighed heavily on my soul, leading me to question whether my faith was genuinely liberating or simply a facade crafted from fear. The turning point came during a particularly trying period. I was still reeling from personal losses and crushing responsibilities when a moment of anguish led me to the brink of a near-death experience. One evening, as I walked home from the mosque, a sudden attack left me unconscious. In that moment of darkness, I was thrust into a realm that transcended my understanding of life and death. Encased in a black void, I felt a surge of energy pulling me toward a luminous light. As I approached, I was met by Jesus, radiating an embrace of love and compassion that enveloped my being. I didn't just see him, I felt him. Every fiber of his presence resonated with a truth that pierced through the layers of doubt I had accumulated. During this encounter, Jesus opened my eyes to hidden truths about the world. He illuminated the spiritual war that thrives around us, revealing how the elite manipulate faith for control. In vivid visions, I witnessed the deception that shapes our societies, how leaders exploit fear and ignorance to perpetuate division and strife. The clarity of those revelations sent shockwaves through my very essence. I understood that the teachings I had devoted my life to were often twisted, serving agendas that kept the masses in a state of ignorance. I saw families torn apart by rigid beliefs, communities fractured by hatred, and individuals like me caught in cycles of despair. As I was drawn deeper into this understanding, I felt an awakening, a call to action that I could no longer ignore. The realization struck me with both fear and urgency. I had a responsibility to share what I had learned, to break free from the chains of tradition that had bound me for so long. If I remained silent, I would not only betray my awakening, but also those still trapped in the layers of deception. I envisioned a new life where I could use my voice to expose the truths that Jesus had revealed to me, guiding others towards their own awakening. Yet, the fear of backlash from my community loomed large, casting long shadows over my newfound purpose. When I finally regained consciousness, the world I returned to felt starkly different. The sterile walls of the hospital contrasted sharply with the warmth of the revelations I had encountered. I felt unsettled, as if the very foundations of my existence had shifted. My role as a cleric began to feel like a heavy burden rather than the honor it once was. The pressure to conform to societal expectations clashed violently with the truths I now held dear. I grappled with the consequences of my awakening. Could I truly stand against the tide of tradition and the fierce grip of fear? I realized the journey ahead would not be straightforward, and the urgency to speak out against the deception felt palpable. The battle for truth had just begun, and I was ready to face whatever came next in the name of liberation. As I stood in the mosque, surrounded by the echoes of prayers and the soft murmurs of worshippers, I felt a deep void settle within me. My name is Amir, and for years I've served as a respected cleric in Indonesia, teaching the tenets of Islam and guiding my community with an unwavering hand. But even as I led prayers, presenting a serene exterior, an internal conflict brewed beneath the surface. Each heartfelt recitation felt hollow, resonating with a dissonance that gnawed at my spirit. I began to question the very truths that had guided my life, wondering if the faith I had devoted myself to was truly serving its purpose, or if it was simply another tool of deception imposed by the elite. In the silence that followed each prayer, unsettling dreams would plague my nights. Night after night, I found myself face to face with a smiling Christian figure, someone I had been taught to view with skepticism. He watched me with an expression of compassion, as if urging me to seek a deeper understanding of something I had long ignored. I woke up in a cold sweat, heart racing, feeling an inexplicable connection to this man who seemed at once foreign and familiar. The dreams disturbed me, prompting a growing sense of disconnection from the teachings that had once held me captive. I felt isolated, caught between the beliefs I had been raised with and the yearning for something more profound. As I wrestled with these thoughts, I became acutely aware of the societal pressures surrounding me. The expectations of my community weighed heavily on my conscience, demanding unwavering allegiance to tradition while stifling the very questions that arose from my heart. The phrase spiritual war began to echo in my mind, a war between faith and fear, between longing for truth and the chains of conformity. I witnessed the manipulation of our beliefs, the ways in which religion could be twisted to serve hidden agendas, often creating rifts within families and communities. This realization filled me with both dread and urgency, as I understood how easily we could be led astray by those in power. Days turned into weeks, and my internal struggle deepened. I felt an urgency to explore my spirituality beyond the confines of what I had always known. The disquiet continued to consume me until one fateful night, I found myself swept into another realm, into the depths of a near-death experience. As I lost consciousness, I was met by a blinding light. In that sacred space, Jesus stood before me, and for the first time, I felt an indescribable love envelop me. His voice resonated deep within, revealing to me the truths that had been hidden from my understanding, truths that would change the course of my life. In those moments under the light of Jesus, I saw the world differently. I was shown the consequences of deception, the harsh realities of division fostered by fear and manipulation. Histories unfolded before me, and I understood the gravity of the spiritual war we faced, with its implications reaching far beyond my personal doubts. Jesus spoke of awakening, of rising above the constraints imposed by society, and pushing through the fog of confusion to grasp the truth that eluded so many. As I emerged from my experience, I knew I could no longer ignore what had been revealed. My understanding of faith had shifted irrevocably, and with it came the realization that my journey was just beginning. One night, driven by desperation and a deep longing for answers, I found myself fervently praying. My name is Amir, and as a Muslim cleric in Indonesia, the weight of my role often felt insurmountable. I immersed myself in prayer, seeking clarity amidst a growing emptiness that haunted me. The rituals and traditions that had once provided a framework for my life now felt like chains, binding me to an existence that lacked genuine fulfillment. I was caught in a spiritual war, wrestling with the expectations of those around me, while desperately searching for truth in my own heart. That night, as I prayed with fervor, everything changed. A sudden accident left me unconscious, thrusting my spirit into a coma. It was during this darkness that I experienced something profoundly transformative. In the void, I encountered a presence, a light that seemed to emanate warmth and compassion. It was Jesus. He appeared before me, a luminous figure who dispelled the shadows that had clouded my understanding. In his presence, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace, like being wrapped in a divine embrace. As he looked into my soul, my fears began to dissolve, and I understood that this encounter was a revelation meant just for me. Jesus spoke directly to me, revealing the hidden agenda of the elite, those who sought to manipulate spirituality for their own gain. I witnessed visions of societies torn apart by conflict and division, where religious beliefs became tools for control rather than pathways to liberation. With clarity, he showed me how the spiritual war was not merely a battle between good and evil, but a struggle for the hearts and minds of individuals caught in deception. I watched as families were divided over dogma, leaders fueled hatred for power, and individuals wandered aimlessly, longing for the truth but shackled by tradition. As the revelations unfolded, I was struck by how religious traditions often obstruct genuine divine understanding. I learned that the very structures I had vowed to uphold could entrap believers in fear, leading them away from the love and grace that Jesus offered. The clarity of those truths filled me with urgency. I realized that my journey was not simply about my own awakening. It was about igniting a flame in others, guiding them toward the truth that had been hidden in plain sight. Even in my coma, I felt the calling to share this message, a mission that spanned beyond the walls of my community. When I eventually regained consciousness, the world felt different. The sterile room around me could not contain the fire ignited in my spirit. As I processed the magnitude of what I had experienced, I was filled with both fear and determination. How could I share these revelations without facing rejection or ridicule, particularly from those I loved most? I felt the weight of familial and societal expectations pressing down on me heavily. Yet, I knew that remaining silent would betray the truth that had been revealed to me. My awakening was urgent, compelling me to act, to rise and speak out against the deception that kept so many in darkness. The path ahead would be fraught with challenges, but with each passing moment, the conviction to fulfill my calling grew stronger. Upon awakening, I found myself enveloped in a shroud of disdain and rejection. My name is Amir, and I had been a respected cleric in my community in Indonesia. When I emerged from the coma that followed my near-death experience, the world around me felt altered, heavy with judgment and betrayal. As I struggled to process the divine revelations I had received from Jesus, revelations that illuminated the deception woven into our societal beliefs, I was met with hostility. My family, once my staunch supporters, looked upon me with disdain. I was labeled a heretic, an outcast for daring to question the faith that had defined our lives. The weight of this designation was suffocating. As I sat in the shadows of my existence, grappling with the profound internal crisis that ensued, guilt ripped at me mercilessly. I had spent years promoting and upholding the very traditions that now felt like shackles. The teachings that once resonated deeply began to reveal a hidden agenda, one that favored the elite while stifling the spiritual awakening that so many yearned for. I felt trapped between two worlds, the comfort of familiar beliefs and the uncharted territory of spiritual freedom. Each moment was a battle against fear. Fear of losing everything I had ever known. Fear of being cut off from my family. Fear of the social ramifications that loomed large. In the solitude that followed, I often recalled the moment when Jesus had appeared to me in that dark void. His presence was a warm light that dispelled the shadows of doubt and fear. He had shown me the truths that lay beneath the surface, revealing how societal divisions and manipulation fostered a spiritual war that raged on, hidden from those trapped in conventional beliefs. My soul resonated with the urgency of his message, a calling to awaken not just myself but those around me. Yet at the same time, I wrestled with an unbearable sense of shame for my doubts and questions. Was I betraying my heritage by seeking truth beyond the confines of my upbringing? Dreams filled with images of the smiling figure of Jesus haunted my nights, each vision urging me to embrace the path of awakening, even as my days were filled with rejection and doubt. In these troubled moments, I longed for understanding and connection, hoping that others shared my newfound clarity. I sought out discreet gatherings of like-minded individuals who had also endured their own awakenings, hoping they could understand the burden I carried. Yet, even in their company, I faced internal conflict. There was a comfort in talking about the manipulation by the elite and the ways in which our beliefs had been distorted, but I still feared the repercussions of voicing my experiences publicly. The more I engaged with this community, the more I realized that my fight was not solely for myself, but also for the many souls trapped in the same cycle of deception. The urgency to share my truth grew stronger, propelling me to consider how I could break through the barriers that the society I had once cherished had constructed around me. Yet, with each passing day, the tension between my desire for spiritual freedom and my fear of losing familiarity threatened to paralyze me. My awakening felt like a double-edged sword. It was both a gift and a curse that demanded courage I wasn't sure I possessed. Still, profound truths burned within me, and I sensed an undeniable calling to step forward, to embrace both the light and shadow of my journey, and to navigate the spiritual war that unfolded around me. As I sought understanding and acceptance, in a world that seemed determined to keep me in the dark, in secret, I began to explore the Bible, drawn by an insatiable curiosity and an overwhelming desire for truth. My name is Amir, and as a former Muslim cleric in Indonesia, the journey I was undertaking felt both thrilling and terrifying. I had witnessed dark realities through the revelations brought by Jesus during my near-death experience, and now I was desperate to understand how those truths could coexist with the beliefs I had held dear for so long. The world I had known began to unravel, revealing the manipulations of the elite and how religious traditions often masked a hidden agenda. Yet, each time I turned a page, confidence surged alongside doubt. Would this exploration lead me to profound awakening or further alienation? Through whispered conversations and cloaked meetings, I found kinship in a small group of Christians who had similarly undergone transformative revelations. Each one of them had faced their own battles, emerging from the shadows of deception with stories that resonated deeply within my heart. There was an unspoken understanding between us, a bond tethered together by our shared experiences. We spoke of the spiritual war that enveloped us, how fear was wielded as a weapon against those who dared to question the status quo, and how the truth we spoke of was a balm for weary souls caught in the conflict. Being among them brought a sense of peace I had not felt in years, yet an ache remained, an undercurrent of fear that my new reality would cost me everything familiar. As we gathered in dimly lit rooms, my soul was nourished, and with every shared prayer, I felt the grip of isolation begin to loosen. But, even amidst this newfound community, I wrestled with an inner turmoil. Each conversation about faith and awakening kept pulling me deeper into the waters of commitment, while the fear of total loss loomed overhead. I was acutely aware that if my family and community discovered my exploration, the backlash could be devastating. The narrative of betrayal hung heavily, a haunting reminder of all I stood to lose. Yet, despite the turmoil, a flicker of courage ignited within me, an urge to take that final step towards the truth that had so completely transformed my understanding. It was during one of those clandestine gatherings that I gathered the courage to pray sincerely to Jesus, pouring out my fears and doubts. I longed for clarity, for strength to embrace the awakening that spurred within me. In that vulnerable moment, I felt a connection, a profound understanding that transcended my prior teachings. The moments that followed are etched in my memory, the gentle encouragement of my newfound friends, who stood ready to support me as I prepared for my baptism, a sacred act that would symbolize my commitment to the truth I had come to embrace fully. Each day leading up to that moment was filled with anticipation and dread. I contemplated the depths of my decision as I acted secretly, navigating my role as a professor in a world that expected unwavering adherence to established beliefs. The tension built as the date approached. I knew that stepping into the waters of baptism would mark the beginning of my journey into a new life, but it also meant severing ties with the past in a way that felt irrevocable. Doubt seeped into my mind, threatening to drown me in fear. Still, the overwhelming sense of peace I felt when I envisioned the love and acceptance of Jesus brought me back to my purpose. I was ready to rise, to move beyond the deception and embrace the calling that lay ahead, even if the path remained shrouded in uncertainty. As I delved deeper into my newfound faith, it became increasingly clear that my experience wasn't just for my own awakening. It was a calling, a divine purpose ignited within me. I realized that the revelations bestowed upon me by Jesus had significance beyond my personal journey. With each passing day, the urge to share my story grew stronger. I felt compelled to speak out against the spiritual manipulation I had observed, a deception that ensnared so many, including those I loved. My name is Amir, and as a former cleric in Indonesia, I understood the profound impact of silence in the face of spiritual war. During my time as a professor, I had witnessed firsthand how beliefs can be twisted to serve hidden agendas. As I began to grasp the depth of the deception I had lived under, it became my mission to warn others. I watched my fellow community members navigate their lives, often blind to the forces that manipulative leaders wielded against them. There was a suffocating pressure to adhere to tradition and banish any thoughts of dissent. I found myself yearning to break that silence, to stand up for those who were still trapped in the rigid confines of their faith, convinced that questioning was an affront to God. The urgency of my message weighed heavily on my heart. I started writing down my experiences, capturing the moments of enlightenment that Jesus had shared with me during my near-death experience. The spiritual truth I had encountered was powerful and profound, and I knew it held the potential to ignite awakening in others. My dreams were filled with visions of the smiling figure of Jesus, urging me to open my mouth and declare the truth I had uncovered. I envisioned the faces of those in my community, friends, family, students, and I couldn't shake the thought that they too deserved the chance to experience the same liberation I had found. Yet beneath that growing resolve, a tide of fear began to swell. I still grappled with the repercussions of my revelations. What if I was ostracized? What if my loved ones turned their backs on me? Despite the risk, the thought of remaining silent felt like a betrayal to the spiritual truths I had come to embrace. I could no longer ignore the gnawing sense that I had a responsibility to share this awakening. The stakes were high, and a sense of urgency surged within me, pushing me toward action. I began to seek out others who shared a similar calling, forming connections with those who had also broken free from the chains of deception, and together we envisioned a movement for spiritual awakening. Drawing strength from this newfound community, I embarked on the brave journey of sharing my story. I began speaking at small gatherings, sharing the insights Jesus had revealed during my coma, the ways he illuminated the hidden agendas of the elite manipulating our lives. As I boldly proclaimed the truth, I could see the flickers of recognition in people's eyes, a testament to the inner conflict many were experiencing. The more I spoke, the more I felt my own fears ebb away. I realized I was not alone in this fight against the spiritual war. There were others who had faced the same struggles and longed for the same freedom. Each story shared felt like a thread pulling us together, weaving a tapestry of awakening that could not be ignored. I performed a symbolic act of liberation by leaving my home and changing my name. This decision wasn't just about altering my identity. It was a profound statement against the life I once knew as a Muslim cleric in Indonesia. My name is Amir, but as I embraced this new chapter, I adopted a new identity, one free from the weight of religious expectations and societal norms that had bound me for so long. Life had become a series of suffocating rituals, and after my encounter with Jesus, I realized I had to embark on a new journey, one that would lead me through vast deserts, physical and spiritual. In this solitude, I sought to discover a new purpose that aligned with the truth I had found. With every step into the desert sun, I felt fragments of my past slip away. I grappled with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. Would I find solace in this journey? Would I truly be able to serve others who were oppressed by rigid religious systems? The thought of the spiritual war that raged within and around me weighed heavily on my heart as I pondered the fate of those still trapped in the deception I had escaped. In those barren landscapes, I learned that liberation came with its own set of struggles. The heat of the sun mirrored the fire of conviction within me, igniting a desire to spread hope to those still lost in darkness. The revelations I had received from Jesus flooded my mind as I walked. I thought of how he illuminated the deceptions perpetuated by the elite, manipulating faith to consolidate power. I had seen firsthand how those in authority distorted truths to maintain control over the masses, exploiting fear to keep us shackled to outdated beliefs. This realization fueled my resolve. I felt compelled to reach out to those oppressed by the very systems I once upheld, sharing the truth I had discovered and advocating for their spiritual awakening. My journey transformed into an act of service, an opportunity to help others rise above the limitations imposed upon them. Yet, the solitude of the desert also brought moments of doubt. I questioned whether I truly had the strength to continue this path. Would others even listen to my words? Could I really convey the message of hope and liberation that had changed my life? Each day, the struggle within intensified. But so did my conviction. I began to encounter fellow travelers on this desolate path, individuals who had faced their own struggles, each carrying the burden of their religious systems. Together, we forged a community, a small army in the spiritual war, united by our pursuit of truth. As I interacted with these kindred spirits, I witnessed their awakening spark before my eyes, igniting a flame of hope in a world marred by division. I shared my story with fervor, recounting my experiences and the profound love I had felt in the presence of Jesus. In their eyes, I saw reflections of my own journey, confusion, fear, but ultimately a glimmer of awakening. I understood that my liberation was intricately tied to theirs. We were bound by the quest to expose the hidden agenda that perpetuated oppression within our communities. Each moment became a reminder of how interconnected we truly are. The fight for one's freedom is a fight for all. As our voices grew louder, fueling our shared mission, I felt the call to spread this newfound awareness further afield, a journey just beginning. Years later, I found myself in a new community, dedicating my life to evangelism. My name is Amir, and as a former Muslim cleric in Indonesia, my journey had transformed in ways I never dreamed possible. After my encounter with Jesus, the revelation of truth had ignited a fire within me that compelled me to share my story with others. I experienced the incredible power of being reborn, not just spiritually, but in every aspect of my existence. I was no longer confined by the fears and expectations of my past. Instead, I was driven by a profound sense of purpose. In my new surroundings, I felt the weight of my testimony. Each moment spent with others who were searching for hope reminded me of my own struggles, how lost I had felt before awakening to the truth. I would speak passionately about the spiritual war that exists, one that is fought not only in distant lands but within the hearts of those around us. The exploitation by the elite, their hidden agendas, and the deception they wielded were all lies I had once upheld. Now, free from those shackles, I opened my heart to others, hoping to inspire their awakening. As I shared my experiences, the reactions were varied. Some embraced my message enthusiastically, while others approached it with skepticism. I could sense the tension in the air as I relayed how Jesus redirected my life, illuminating the paths filled with darkness and doubt. Those moments of connection filled me with hope, knowing I could help others break free from their own chains of confusion. I felt called to shed light in the shadows that many choose to ignore, to expose the deception woven into the fabric of society, especially in regard to spirituality and religious systems. Despite the victories, there was an ache that lingered deep within me, an unresolved longing to reconcile with my family. I still vividly recalled the pain in their eyes when I left, the way they viewed me as a traitor to our faith. It hurt to think that they could never truly grasp the depth of my transformations or the love I had found in Jesus. I often prayed for their hearts to be opened, believing that the light of truth could penetrate even the darkest shadows. Sharing my testimony became not only a tool of evangelism, but also a vessel of hope, a bridge that might one day reconnect me with those I loved. With each passing day, I endeavored to spread the message of awakening. I launched community outreach efforts to engage those still trapped in rigid belief systems, empowering them to question, to seek, to discover. I watched as lives transformed before my eyes, as others found the courage to break their silence, just as I had done. The urgency of our mission grew palpable, a relentless drive to arm souls with the knowledge that truth exists beyond the confines of deception. As I stood among them, I recognized that the journey was far from over. Every conversation sparked new connections, and with each moment, the resolve to amplify our voices against the spiritual war intensified. I knew that the battle for hearts and minds was one that could change the world, and I was ready to embrace whatever it took to make that a reality. The central message of my journey now resonates with a truth I've come to embrace. While religion can sometimes imprison, it is the truth that liberates. My name is Amir, and as a former Muslim cleric in Indonesia, I once believed wholeheartedly in the doctrines that defined my life. Yet, everything changed when Jesus appeared to me during a near-death experience, unveiling revelations that shattered my previously held beliefs. After that moment, the world around me transformed, and I was propelled into a spiritual war that demanded not only my understanding but also my courage. In that dark moment when I encountered Jesus, it became clear that I was being called out of the shadows into the light of awakening. He opened my eyes to the hidden agendas that perpetuated deception in our world, agendas crafted by the elite who wielded religion as a control mechanism over the masses. I witnessed a tapestry of manipulation that led to societal division, where fear was used as a weapon against those seeking deeper understanding. The weight of this revelation pressed heavily upon my heart, igniting a fire of urgency to share the truth with others like me who were still trapped in dogma and despair. As the memories of my past life flickered in my mind, I recognized how the very teachings I had upheld often smothered the divine connection I sought. While the rituals felt familiar, they also felt more like chains than pathways to God. Jesus' call to awaken was not just a personal invitation, it was a challenge directed at everyone who resisted the light. The individuals paralyzed by fear, or who believed that questioning faith was an act of blasphemy. I understood then that my pain in navigating these revelations was a part of the transformative journey toward finding purpose and hope. In the months that followed, I dedicated my life to evangelism, driven by the impact my testimony could have on others. Yet that commitment was not without struggle. I grappled with the fear of losing everything familiar: the community that once embraced me, the respect I had cultivated, and the love of my family. Still, the pain of remaining silent in the face of such monumental truths became unbearable. It was my mission to reflect the light I experienced through Jesus, and to offer that illumination to those who were still wandering in darkness. I sought out friendships with like-minded individuals, creating relationships bonded by the shared understanding of escaping deception and fear. As I spread the message of awakening, I saw the transformative power of truth at work. I began to witness the liberation of others, as we engaged in deep conversations that challenged the status quo. With each life touched, I felt the walls built by fear and ignorance begin to crumble. We were combatants in the spiritual war, fighting against the falsehoods that had long ensnared us. The stories shared were filled with hope and power, tales of individuals who had wrestled with their doubts, longing for authenticity in their spiritual journeys. We were united in our struggle, fueled by the understanding that while the path may be painful, the profound purpose it revealed was worth every tear shed. As I reflect on this journey that began in the shadows, I can't help but feel a deep sense of urgency to share this message with you. My name is Amir, and what I've experienced, the awakening I encountered after Jesus illuminated my path, wasn't just meant for me. It's a call to all of us caught in the web of fear, tradition, and manipulation. We are in the midst of a spiritual war, one that challenges the very essence of our beliefs and compels us to seek the truth buried beneath layers of deception. Have you ever sat in silence, feeling the weight of the world pressing down on you, wondering if there's something greater at play? If you've experienced that unsettling void, or perhaps moments of clarity that have left you questioning everything, I invite you to share your experiences. I want to know, how has your journey shaped your understanding of faith? Your reflections matter, as each voice adds to a collective awakening that the world desperately needs. Before we part, I urge you, don't let this moment slip away. Subscribe to Truth from Beyond and activate the notification bell. Together, we can embark on this journey of discovery, illuminating paths that have long remained hidden. The truth beckons. It's time we start unveiling it. In our next video, we will delve into another extraordinary testimony, uncovering how individuals from various backgrounds have experienced similar awakenings. Thank you for being here, for being part of this community that strives for understanding and enlightenment. I'm Amir, and as we continue to explore these profound truths together, remember, the light of awakening is always within reach for those who seek it. Until next time, stay curious and keep questioning.